Videos keeps coming. This is 1 minute chess. However, it's still good game. This is against 3000. You don't get to 3000 that easy, and anybody who's 3000 are pretty strong as far as I can tell you. It's one of my best wins here. Looking forward to beat some stronger players even, and 1 minute chess. I try to provide games that has a meaning to it. Like I won a lot of games and I lost a lot of games. But sometimes you win games, you know why. It's not. It's like a blunder, bad blunder by your opponent. But there are games where you do win a game, but it's very constructive. There's like an idea behind it. One or two ideas that seems to be pretty good. So I was playing here d4 c5. So I had a laugh against this move during the game, even though it's 1 minute chess. I had a laugh. This is actually the old Benoni. It's not it doesn't happen often, like to see this kind of opening. And the reason that people sometimes play it is to avoid some kind of like theory. I believe you can still play the London. By the way, I've been told that maybe you may not get the London comfortably here. I think you still do like c3, knight f3. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like c5 is not really, in the classical format. In the Bononi itself or the old Bononi are not really competing enough against, white setup. But it's always a try, and this is 1 minute chess. Anything is playable. Old Bononi, Binko Gambit even. Everything is playable, considering... I mean, maybe my opponent was laughing against like e3. I mean, if c5 is laughable, e3 is just as laughable as well. So e3 takes, knight f6, c3, g6, knight f3, bishop d3, and castles. By the way, openings are really relevant among advanced players only. Should you be like 2000 local federation or international federation, then opening becomes really relevant in a classical format. Meaning that in a classical format, you're trying to play an opening that based on your style and try to surprise your opponent. And also, you could gain like a time management thing against your opponent, which may give you some score that might win games like that. But the better player that seems to be prepared could win games, or it could give you a good chance of winning a game. Or he's just comfortably playing an opening that fits his style. Like you don't have to think about it. You already have the lines booked up. But for players below 2000, openings are not really relevant, especially when it comes to like faster time controls. 3-0, 1-0, even hyperbolic chess. So d5, hyperbolic chess, anything goes pretty much, including 1h4. So rook e1, knight c6, knight e5 takes, knight d7. I felt like here white is comfortable. Knight c5, bishop c2. I think my opponent's next move, next move is really kind of strange. We talked about pawn moves. That's another pawn moves. If I take, the pawn moves to f5. The reason I hate this move, bishop f5, and I believe this is like an instant move by me, and I think I took, so take here. The pawn move from g6 to f5, is it a good idea? I felt like this is not a really good idea. The reason being is, the king is exposed. And I felt like there was no need to do this. You could play other lines, other bishop move, maybe even bishop e6. There was no need to voluntarily do this. And for some reason, this whole idea with pawn being here was trouble. And I keep telling people pawn moves in chess seems to be key. Whether it's a trade or you're just pushing it. In this case, it's actually like a trade. It's equivalent to like a pawn push, So you have to be careful when you do this kind of stuff. So bishop e3 is a very good move, I believe. Again, you move, you attack, forcing the opponent to defend. So here you attack the knight. He has to move the knight, or he has to defend it. In this case, he played knight e4, and so obviously knight e4 here is pretty annoying. The knight is sitting there for the longest time. Maybe for a couple of years, so we needed to find a way to trade it. And I was like, this knight is going to be traded soon. However, knight d2, e6. You have to ask yourself questions. You trade, this gives a pass pawn. Probably, and I think around here, I felt like maybe take here was probably interesting, more interesting. I think my opponent took with the wrong pawn. I feel like maybe this, so there's some play on the queen, on the d file. Maybe try to trade queens. Should we trade queens here? It would be interesting. So this pawn at f5 is no longer a concern, right? There would not be a concern about, like a king safety kind of thing. He took with the wrong pawn, I believe. That this is actually what I looked at this, I was like, I'm happy. However, having the pawn at e4 is a pass pawn. Is this pawn is going anywhere? Should we trade every single piece as we go to a pawn ending? This perhaps should be like close to winning for black. If we get to that far, if we have the same setup like that. But the pawn here, we're still not really trading everything. White is not obligated to do this. So I played queen e2, f5, rook d1, rook f d1, rook c8, the other rook at c1. He's attacking the pawn, a3, queen e4, bishop d4. Now, bishop d4 is really good. And we'll get to it why is really good. I mean, really, the bishop is eyeing this kind of diagonal and eyeing this kind of diagonal. This diagonal is not the real worry. His other one is really worry. It's because it's near the king. And it's centralized piece. And there's no way really you could, there's no like pawn here or anything that you could play like c5. You would love to do this so the bishop gets out of the way. So the bishop is really centralized. This is more like a positional move, eyeing certain things later down the road. So a6, I'm not sure about a6. Maybe he was looking like, if he moved the queen, the pawn would be hanging. And then I play g3, and then king h8, king h1, queen b3, rook g1. So now that's the trouble. That's exactly why I talked about f5 being not a greatest move. White is just going to open up the line. And considering the bishop on d4, I feel like, there is not much resistance for black. And around here, I felt like, how could black really defend this? And next move is like here, and I think this is actually a blunder by him. Again, we talked about tempos. It doesn't matter if you play 1 minute chef, 3-0, 5-0, 5 hours a game. You don't want to make a move that allows a loss of a tempo, meaning your opponent make a move, you react, and then you defend, or you retreat back. So in that case, my next move actually makes a perfect sense, right? Queen h5. Actually, I didn't play this yet. I missed queen h5. Here, before we get to queen h5, though, I mean, I had like queen h5 right now, I believe. Maybe I was a little bit concerned about this pawn, but, rook b1 and I take here. I cannot stress enough. We're gonna get to queen h5. However, I want to speak about queen c4 because queen c4 is kind of smart. I believe like it's smart move. Should you retreat the queen? That would show like a kind of like a lack of understanding about the position. Meaning, black when he did this, he understand that should he trade the queens, he has a pawn at e4. Black would be comfortable. He also have the white. All the pawns are like in white squares, which is kind of interesting. So the pawns are not attackable, while my pawns are. So should you trade everything or go to bishop ending, he's actually in a good position, right? So white best interest is not to trade queens. And the next move is queen h5. The in-between moves is kind of interesting. So the reason queen h5 is pretty good actually back then and now, like I could have played it here as I discussed, I think around here. You could have played queen h5 here, I think. So I played it around here. And then simply around here, he played bishop g8. And this is a loss of a tempo. This is exactly what I talked about. Because the bishop is being attacked, you give a free move. The bishop has to be moving somewhere. I think this is like not an option because of g4. So he has to go back. So he lost the move. In chess, forget about it. Like if you do this kind of stuff, losing a tempo, it could be the difference of losing a game. If, as I mentioned, again, Magnus Carlsen is really strong player, extremely strong when it gets to like tempos. He doesn't lose tempos. I don't think. I don't think I ever see him losing tempos unless the game is really bad and he's just losing the game. Losing tempos could be losing the game. That's it. It couldn't. It doesn't have to be tactic. It doesn't have to be positional. It's just like you don't waste move in chess like that. So the bishop was on g7. So why he played bishop h6 and then has to go back. So now obviously g4. So obviously I gained the extra move that I wanted to do to open up the line. Considering now the bishop is active, the rook is on the g file. Things are getting really tough. As a matter of fact, rook g8 may not even do anything for him. I could just take here. You're opening up everything at this point. Everything is being opened up. Queen e2 is a try. I don't know. I think that queen is belonging somewhere, like d3, f3, but he's not going there. And I think here I missed my chance. You know, I believe I had like queen g5, which is extremely tough move to deal with here. I think it's because the queen would be like on the g file. I think rook g8 does not work. Pawn takes. And there's some kind of e6, I think, around... I think it's like queen g5 here, and then you take on f5. And then simply if you take here, queen takes, and he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have queen f3 or anything. And you open up the line, and you take on f5, and then potentially the bishop comes across. And I kind of missed it. I played actually inferior move here. This is not bad move per se, but the next move is, by me. This is a real bad move. The reason this is terrible move actually is because I'm like this. I actually during the game I felt like, you know, that this is no longer winning for me, and I was able to spot the move myself during it's even though it's like 1 minute chess. Queen f3, yeah, queen f3 is really strong. I think it puts a stop to my tactics. The reason being is he could play a baby rook g8 at some point, and the pin is pretty strong. Or he could start defending properly here. And I forgot that the pin is really, you know, I have to like untangle myself, like h3, king h2. I may lose like 2 moves. And again, if you're losing 2 moves, he's just giving him like a free, you know, kind of like 2 tempes. So he didn't do it. I was completely shocked because this is the only move that makes sense, right? Considering the queen is around the area. So why not just pin it? And he played here, which actually completely losing now. I feel like here you just take the pawn. You just take the pawn, you're opening up. So queen f3 is not the same now. I could think this queen g5, it should be winning. Rook takes may lead to this, which is actually similar to perhaps happening in the game. So here, I mean, maybe I should go back. I mean, it's easy for people to see the tactic, but if you saw it, that's fine. Here, this is a terrible move. And this is the reason why opening up the line is terrible. I was able to spot this in like really in a fast format. Fast. And this is like a pattern that usually could happen. And here, pause the video. If you saw the tactic in the notation, that's okay. I believe that'll be fine. If you do not care about the notation and you did not find the move, pause the video and try to see if there's any issues here after rook takes f5. I mean, this is like an instant idea that you could find. Consider the open file here. If you found it, that's pretty good. If you didn't really find it, again, hitting the tactics puzzles would be really necessary here, actually. Because this pattern continues to happen in all games. A lot of new games may have this kind of pattern. So the idea is pretty simple. Rook here. Now I'm going to make the move assuming that you found the move, okay? If you not find it, as I mentioned before, you could still do tactics. But making the move now, so the idea is pretty simple. It's check, and this is a combo. It's not just simply a one check. It's actually, it's leading to like really a mate coming. Should you play here? Rook g8 checkmate. Should you play rook f8, which he did? Well, guess what? It's the same pattern. You just take here. And my opponent actually played this all the way through. Bishop takes, and then checkmate. The reason this happened is because I opened up the file. And the problem with this game per se is actually all comes down to small details. It wasn't really tactical by any means, I think the idea comes down that he played a couple of mistakes here. If we just go back here, I felt like this one is a lot stronger. It may put some resistance here. You play some, should I trade queens? This is not very good. Should I play queen e2? There's potential maybe even here. Even though he has here, he may have some play. This is a little bit different, and also it's kind of slow to play g4 right now. I mean, I have to like go back here. He may have some play. I still like white though. The pawn might be hanging. He may not play queen d3 right away. He may just prepare, like maybe queen here, then rook over there, and try to get some play. There's also like queen e6 ideas. However, I may still like play like queen f2, h3, g4. I may still come across with attack, but it's a try to try to play on the d file. Again, the biggest mistake of all is actually, possibly this one. This actually led to the attack after like g4 and all of this. Without this move, I don't know if bishop e6 maybe a playable move. We could even check with the computer, just to be comfortable. Look at this. Computer feels like this is equal. Let me check with the computer about bishop f5. Here we go. White is slightly better. That happens to be, and then the computer is suggesting he's a stake. So this is completely good for white. There was different options. Queen b6. By the way, queen b6 is interesting because now the computer is saying it, because you cannot really go here. There's like some weird tactic. Like let's say here you take here. There's like rook d8 and then some kind of a knight move, knight d3. So this pawn is not takeable right now according to the engine. So bishop e6 is, I don't know if is it still playable, but there's also another move that you could do like b6, and then actually b6 makes a lot of sense. Maybe bishop b7, knight e4 in some lines, queen c7, assuming that you're still protecting that pawn in a certain way. Like let's say bishop e3, then bishop. I don't know why bishop f5 here is like a preference, to be honest. It's still the same issue. I would say around here the safest move is probably queen b6. You don't have to worry about bishop f5 should you play here, and then rook d8. That should be good moves. This is more than enough for equal position. However, the biggest mistake I felt like is like bishop f5. The reason I won this game is because of that move, nothing else. It's just like one idea, and this is the reason why I showed this game is actually one idea that comes down, and then I was able to apply some attack on the G file. Without this idea, the game would probably be entirely different. Like it's gonna be different position with different ideas. But the reason bishop f5, it's just a simple idea that I was able to apply and attack on the G file and win the game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this game and stay tuned for future ones. Take care.